Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Hey, everyone. All right, test.
Hello. Hi.
Hello.
Hello. Does everyone have the notes?
Yes.
I don't.
Hello.
Notes.
I am having issues with desktops on my phone. Could someone link to the notes in the chat, please?
Hi guys, Victor here.
Hey.
Hello.
Is there no video here, right?
I don't have any video available right now.
Okay. I
Right,
don't see.
cool.
I don't see the
Get started?
either.
Who else here? Sorry, let me find the.
I don't know how we can see the list.
I think so. We can. I guess we can get started. So last 2 weeks ago, we didn't have a. There was some kind of call, but not really. There was some misunderstanding with the meeting and so on. Sorry about that. Is it accurate, or did we have a call last 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, I was at Eurocrypt and things got a little hairy, and I think there was some confusion about URLs and stuff as well. But anyway.
All right. Okay. Cool. Should we go through and just do brief things? I guess are there specific things people want to talk about? So one thing is NIM simulation numbers, and maybe briefly on the Sphinx packet format. Is there anything else that people want to talk about?
So I was supposed to be making progress on on more of a spec type thing, and I haven't made too much progress on that. Instead, I submitted some little article to PETS on how you use one of the incentivization schemes to provide meaningful numbers to users about basically which relays they should trust and which ones they shouldn't, in terms of not dropping packets, not trust in terms of being, secure, not trust in terms of not being owned or something. I'll put a link in your thing. But so this is a thing that didn't need to be done right now, except there was a deadline for something that, in the end, they didn't accept it. But that wasn't really surprising. But it was good to sort it out because in Tor, that code is there's actually kind of a lot of code there, and it's hard to maintain. So at least there's one answer to that question. So, and it's a bit more clear than the way Tor has always done these things. So, well, not only sort of more clear, but the direction of it is there. So, yeah, that's not so much a topic to discuss unless anybody has questions about it, but just a thing that's happened. So I'll
cool.
put it.
Could someone take notes? By the way, I realized no, we didn't. Any other specific, any other updates? What else do I have?
I haven't heard from Harry too recently. I guess they got some funding. That's all I really know about their situation.
What about Valid Labs? Do you have an idea what they are?
No, and I'm not sure why they're not on the call either. I was supposed to meet up with Robert and actually make more progress on the Sphinx packet format stuff, but we haven't done this yet. That was a project for, yeah, but somehow it got all lost in the vacations and things.
All right. Peter, by the way, sorry for this slightly confusing meeting right now. I think, do you want to introduce yourself? I don't know if you talked to everyone you talked to before.
Sure. So hi, my name is Peter Olberg. I'm from Mainz. I'm with AnyBlock Analytics, the creators of ETH Events, which is a Ethereum blockchain search engine. And we are interested in service discoverability and availability. And I think that is something you are talking about in the sense of messaging as well. So yeah, I'm interested to listen what your research is doing in the sense of how you discover what route is available and what service is available and so forth. That's like a very short description.
All right, cool, thanks. I guess also there was amazing Swarm Summit 2 weeks ago. It's probably too much. I don't know if Victor, if you want to do a brief summary of things that are relevant here. There's a lot of things happening there.
Maybe Luis, you want to have a go at this? Luis, are you on the call?
I think I saw him somewhere.
So who was actually at the Swarm Summit?
So
yeah, I was there, and then some other people from Status, and then obviously the whole Swarm team, and then a bunch of other products in the general sort of ecosystem.
Okay.
But
That
no
was
one else from this call that I know of.
That was in Madrid?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think anyone from Valid Labs or Nym was there, as far as I remember.
Yeah, no, maybe we should have gone. I don't know. There's limited travel capacity.
Yeah.
Actually, I guess that was, yeah. Right. Okay. Okay. So it wasn't so. Okay. So it was more general discussion thing. Okay. So one other thing we've been trying to do is, Fatima and I have been sort of trying to make some more progress on this layering document. We haven't done that much on it, however. It was for me, it was a secondary priority. But anyway, she's putting some questions into it, which then I'll go through and start answering things. And probably some of the questions as it gets to higher level stuff will be things that I actually don't understand because I haven't been thinking about, like the data sync problem and stuff like this.
Yeah, so on the data sync front, we're doing, we work on sort of integrating it into our sort of proof of concept client. There's still some more sort of mundane engineering issues with that, but it's getting there. And then in terms of dealing with mostly offline devices and so on, we're sort of trying to find a path where it's, for us personally, something that's useful right now, but then sort of moving towards using Swarm for that. We're still working on like a basically what that would look like, and that's also been a general discussion in terms of how to use things like feeds and so on for that. Related to that is also sort of this idea of light nodes or adaptive nodes, where you connect to the network directly, which is something that's very relevant for sort of us in terms of resource restricted device and so on. So we'll hopefully look to sort of work more closely on developing something like that. And I think that's something that would be generally useful if you had sort of Swarm light nodes for any form of communication where you want to use something like Swarm as a storage layer.
Okay. Okay. All right. So, but the data sync is still basically it's syncing between users' devices in the end of the day.
Yes, exactly. Correct.
Fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So
Hello.
devices.
Hello.
Hello.
Okay, so sorry guys, my microphone I have a new microphone because my old one died, and I realized I didn't have it turned on. So I missed a cue earlier about saying something about the summit. Sorry, you can hear me now, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, basically what Oscar mentioned now was, I guess, the salient points of this. So at the summit, I did a presentation of some thoughts on how to do, some thoughts around how to architecture chat functionality and multi-user chat functionality and using feeds with Swarm. And I guess for the adaptive node, light node stuff, there is actually a defined, or will very shortly be a defined track on this, Oscar, right? In the 2 and 3 months leading forward.
Yes.
Where we pitch our head together, so that's pretty concrete that we will be doing this, right? As far as the feed stuff goes, before the summit, I posted some thoughts on this, preliminary thoughts on this feed stuff on the status forum. Oscar and I had, and Eric, I think, was involved in discussing that a bit further. And I'll try to coalesce what I talked about in the summit into a more mature form of that. And then I don't know, Oscar, is there, like, around what's these thoughts, is there something should be more specified or kind of more formalized, or is it partially or wholly orthogonal to what you're thinking about feeds in this context?
Sorry, which part did you mean right there?
The post and the discuss, and also the stuff I talked about in the summit.
Yeah. No, I think that's relevant. I think
so maybe
yeah. I mean, maybe some of those things are more on the slightly different layer. So it was about maybe not actually. I'm not sure.
Actually, so yeah,
maybe we should paste a link.
Yeah, we should probably dig into this a bit more, because everything was, I mean, there was a short discussion about this before, and there was a summit, and all that comes with it, like arms and legs, sort of. So we haven't really had a chance to speak after, right?
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. I think so. I think one thing, because it's like different strategies of attacking after the same problems, and some things are orthogonal, some are not. But for when it comes to Swarm and Mixnet and so on, I think one thing we haven't talked enough about this is in terms of how we can sort of what it would look like to leverage them together. So I guess this goes back to sort of the general problem with light nodes and so on, and the fact that from my understanding, most of the sort of successful Mixnet designs and the actual sort of things in roughly in production, or at least close to it, like Loopix and so on, they're very sort of kind of provider heavy, or they have assumptions on high availability and so on, and it might be a question of having like a service network kind of type of thing. I think we talked about this briefly in Brussels as well. So I don't know if that's something.
Are you talking about the incentivization of nodes?
Yeah, exactly. So maybe I don't know. Like one idea would be that you have sort of this Mixnet between
So there's
sort of more full nodes and then end nodes connect to these, which where that would be like an adaptive node, a light node, or a end client connect. Yeah.
There's two parts to that, if I understood the question. So one of them is we believe that the incentivization stuff will make the reliability better. The other one is that, but that's just some assertion. That's not a fix. The other is that you want to actually measure it, which is the thing that I just wrote up for hot pets that I said that didn't need to happen right now. But so that's one part of it. The problem with that particular measurement strategy is it's a little bit slow. It only gives you, it depends, you can make it fast. But you know, it doesn't tell the users if a node is down right now, but maybe there's no way to do that. So, you know, maybe we could just sort of judge based on, you know, gauge reliability and then go from there somehow. So that's what that was sort of talking about. Okay, so one of the questions is you tell users if the node, you think the node's reliable or not, and the other one is you try and incentivize nodes to be there. And I don't really have a good solution other than that. I don't think we should be penalizing people for their node going down and stuff like that. I mean, maybe that's a possibility, but I haven't thought about it.
Actually, so Victor, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's kind of the idea about the service network based in Swarm, right? That actually people put money on the line that they stand to lose if they don't keep their promise of online availability.
Correct. And
General problem, we ran into this a lot with Polkadot, is that, or we're running into this a lot of Polkadot. It's very hard to prove that somebody's offline, and it's very hard to attribute these faults. Over time, with some statistics, you can attribute something, yes, but you know, it's hard. Like,
The problem is also you might send a message and in the route, the last selected node is not available. Then it will drop, that message will drop and you have to resend it again.
Yeah. I mean, that's not but I was more speaking specifically to the idea of penalizing people. If you can find a way to make it work, I'm all ears. It's just my prejudice was to not look that way because I knew it was hard from, you know, all of the stuff that we've had to do in Polkadot. Like, how do you prove somebody's offline? Maybe they're sometimes online, maybe sometimes they're not. You know, it's kind of tricky.
there's two ways to approach this. If you really want to go into this, one is that basically to incentivize message delivery with the conditional bond. So basically, the acknowledge message unlocks the payment for the message. That's one way. But the other way is to kind of link the online availability with a kind of stream or provable data transmission. Both of these are detailed in the network paper. If you guys have a look.
Okay, I can look at it. Sure.
What you think? But I think this is a bit advanced, and this is a bit further down the line. So
yeah,
I'm not sure if we really want to go into details about this, but I'll be really happy if you gave some feedback on those parts of the document. If you guys are interested in these bits, how to incentivize messaging.
I'm happy to look at stuff at some point. I mean, okay, so one of the things sounded very similar to what the Validity Labs thing was doing, where you pay out for each individual message. And at some point, Robert and I are going to go through that in more detail. I was sort of hoping to not need that all the time, but whatever. Yeah, I think this can come later, but okay, okay. Anyway, we have several people that are thinking about different directions here, and we'll try and keep these things we'll try and pull these threads back together at some point.
Also, just as an FYI, we're going to have because I think it's the direction is slightly, it's more focused, but we're going to have a separate call for sort of adaptive nodes and light nodes in Swarm. I don't know, just in case that might, I'm not sure if that's interesting from an implementation point of view for Web3 or something, but just as an FYI, probably going to have the first call in 2 days. I guess, do we still, in terms of Mixnet and all the things that are required for that, do we still agree that the, sort of the first step there is nailing down the Sphinx packet format?
Yes, and I need to do that. And I probably need to get, I don't really need to chat with people at Harry's group to do this, but it would be handy. Well, I'll be writing some stuff and try and get together more with Robert on this, and then we'll go back to Harry's group with it. And I kind of expect them to say, sure, because they're kind of in the middle of, they've restructured sort of who their team is quite a bit. And so the new people will probably be more amenable to tweaking some things.
Do you think that that's still the priority to sort of have a consensus around this with
that's my priority. Other people, I mean,
no, I know, but both with NIM and Validity Labs. So do you think they're, or what's your read of their priorities?
So Validity Labs, so they did a version, and so mostly this is me convincing them that the things I wanted to tweak should be tweaked, and writing some code that does it, and then
is an issue for this, by the way? Like the specific, is it like an issue for this, like the specific disagreements or whatever it is?
No, there were some specific disagreements with NIM's older developers, but they kept losing developers because they didn't have a team that was working together very well. So the new group, they've hired a bunch of new people that I think it should be quite easy to work with. But I haven't really had as much interaction with them as I would have liked. And Robert and I mean, Robert's right here down the street, and we haven't interacted as much as we like. We just need to get on it instead of, I just need to pull myself away from Polkadot more and be doing this. That's all. Sorry.
No, not at all. I guess, what do people generally feel in terms of these calls? Like to what extent are they sort of useful? And like, does it make sense to have it every other week, or should we have it every month? And like, how does this fit into all the products, different priorities and so on?
I mean, from my point of view, I think it's a bit unstructured, the whole way we are going forward. I don't have a feeling we have like a to-do list and milestones, and so I think that would be nice to, just know where we are in the project, because at the moment, I guess everyone is working on bits and pieces.
Sure.
But there is not an overall structure that everyone is aware of. We are here in the project, or we are there, or this is exactly what we need to do now. I think then the calls would be a bit more.
I mean, I think the reality is well, on our end, we don't have enough people on things. That's the only problem. Yeah, I guess if we pull together the threads of different organizations, yeah, maybe the problem is that I've just not been very good working with people at other organizations. I'm not sure.
But also, I don't think we have much structure in the moment.
Sure. Yeah. Okay.
Structure would help.
Actually, I'd like to ask also.
Sorry.
I'd like to ask also. So I've read through most of the literature that's been linked to. Cool. I mean, as resources for these Web3 comms calls. And my impression is that the data sync layer and the Big Brother protocol is kind of the enclosure around the theme of these calls and the development forward. But I can't help but thinking that there is still some things I haven't read here. So is there like a digest of all, I don't know, something that shows what is actually the enclosure for these meetings? And forgive me if the question is ignorant, but the first couple of, just something that frames the whole, what is actually, so was mentioned here, we're working on bits and pieces. And I don't have quite the feeling of what is the actual, is there like a roadmap? Is there an overarching, I don't know, end goal product.
Okay, so the goal is.
Keep in mind, I wasn't here on the first meeting, and missed.
So the goal is there's a number of people like Status right now that are interested in building sort of distributed messaging solutions and that are privacy preserving. What we would like, the point of these calls is to try and keep in sync between different organizations that have a particular interest in different parts of this stack. And so that eventually we end up with one sort of cohesive stack with some sorts of transports at the bottom and some sort of data sync layer up, some sort of transports at the bottom, some notion of contacts, some, messaging level encryption, and some kind of data sync layer. And so when you say, I even forget the word you used because it didn't sort of in one ear and out the other, but if you talk about sort of the API, 90% of the API that a developer should see in the end should be this data sync layer. But the point of these calls is to structure all the stuff below that. And so it's things like understanding. Anyway, so a bit of the history here is that when sort of in classical times, when cypherpunks went out and tried and built these mixnets and things like this, they had to pick an application to cater to, and they always picked email, and that's even what happened with Katzenpost, because it was sort of the thing that fit. And the point of the data sync layer is to make more applications, more sort of modern applications, fit to this stuff. Does that make sense?
That totally makes sense. So does that mean that, so most of the links that I've seen for, so everything you mentioned so far, I've seen, like mentioned in what I've read, but all of those resources have a status in their links somehow. So is there stuff to read from the other involved organizations here as well that
I can start putting, so I owe everybody more information on the string. So NIM has, there are two people with fully existing mixnet packet formats. There's NIM has the one they inherited from the Panoramics project, which is called Katzenpost. And the only real problem with that one is that it kind of sticks this whole scripting language into the packet format, which makes things nasty on a few levels. Because you don't need that much complexity. And then the other one is the one from Validity Labs, the Hopper protocol. And that's a much simpler, that sort of is the opposite direction. And then the vaporware one from us has, the difference is that it has one extra field, and this extra field lets us do things like store messages in the mixnet. But the storage is completely orthogonal and way below anything the data sync layer does. So it's purely a transport things when the person's offline type of deal. That's so the
documentation on these things by any chance?
Sorry? Links? Sure.
Documentation to this.
Yes. So there's this one. So there's that one, and the Hopper. That's not quite right link, but I'll find the right link in a second. No, that's their grant application. So right, we're actually funding Validity Labs Hopper stuff at this point.
Sorry, where did you post this? I can't see it.
In the notes.
Sorry, I'm still looking for the right links for Hopper stuff.
Do you have much insight into maybe someone from Hoppers here, but like in terms of how they look at the roadmap and so on, because from status point of view, like our focus is on, like, initially on making something that's useful for sort of our end users, which means sort of this data sync stuff. So we don't currently have resources for doing sort of mixed network propagation, like as short term. So yeah.
That's actually fine. We have 3 organizations that want to do the mixed net stuff, you know, and we just have to collaborate amongst ourselves, basically.
So I guess the question is, like, in terms of structure, because I agree that's something that's useful to have more clear in terms of milestones and so on. So do we imagine that as sort of a whole thing, or do we want to keep it focused to the mix and stuff? And if so, then like, what? To me, a lot of it depends on sort of the specific, I guess, implementation teams, or what you want to call it, and how it fits into their roadmap. So in terms of changing the packet format and these types of and PKI and all these things, but it's yeah, I don't know what people's. Do we, when we talk about sort of these milestones and so on, do we imagine that for the whole stack, or are we talking specific about mixed nets?
I think what we could do is that each group could write down what they want to contribute. So we can more make it like a bottom-up approach. And then when we have a list of what everyone wants to do, we can build up some sort of a roadmap, how these together will help to build the system.
I think that sounds like a good approach.
Yeah. Fine. That sounds good.
I still can't see these notes anywhere, though. Where are these notes?
The same place that you wrote notes, above it, the line above is the link to the notes. In the chat.
Okay, I don't have this.
It's also in the Riot channel.
So it's notes.status.im/web3 minus messaging minus.
Oh, okay, I get it. Thank you.
I guess it's also worth mentioning, I'm not sure, but there's also this product that happened with at the hackathon, where Dean from Status and then a bunch of other people from other product chains and so on, they were working on sort of proof of concept for mesh networking and offline messaging and so on. And by offline, I mean without internet, and using relays for that and so on.
Okay,
I'm not sure where that type of thing fits in, because they kind of have they have their own sort of organization started now in some form. In general, like, there's a lot of these types of approaches and so on. It's a matter of how we generally sort of form them, so it's not specific to one product, but it's more like an open set of standards.
Yes.
I guess it's where someone like Harry and his experience with
yeah, well, I mean, yes.
Whatever. So, yeah.
I suspect Harry is a little consumed with being CEO or whatever at the moment. Hopefully it's always possible he'll decide he needs to be doing something more technical and hire somebody else for that role. Or I'm not sure, maybe that's what Jonathan does. Anyway, whatever. Yes, if we can get Harry to do more of that, that would be great, because he's obviously quite good at that. Yeah, I agree completely. I mean, I think what we need to do is we sort of need to have the idea that we're outputting something that's kind of an extremely good particular piece, and then they fit together, but with, you know, obviously there has to be whatever glue and whatever, but if we can build particular, you know, very high quality individual layers, then this is extremely useful. I mean, this is what the MLS people are doing, and you know, this is clearly the right approach.
Yeah.
I mean, generally.
No, I definitely agree with that, and like, that's also, like, we're not talking specifically about the P2P overlay layer, but there is sort of general progress on libp2p, and they have offered to sort of help out if there's a need there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess in terms of how, because the thing that's maybe less clear to me is sort of specifically the mixnet layer, and how we move forwards so that we don't end up with sort of 3 separate implementations, whatever, or some research and then 2 different implementations, and how we go about that and the milestones required for that. The only one we have sort of isolated as a simple target was the sort of Sphinx packet format, and maybe it's just that it will take a while, and we sort of take one step by step. But I don't know what the best.
I don't think it'll take a while. I think it just is a matter of a concentrated period of focused time.
Yeah, I mean that's fine. I don't mean. I just mean maybe in terms of people's like general priority and so on. Like, so it's a question of like how do we move forward with these calls so it's maximally useful, and how do we want to coordinate around this work?
Fine to dropping the call frequency down. I think maybe what we should really attempt to do is we have some idea that sort of these are the repos we should each be following on GitHub, and we should actually be trying to, you know, like I'm not sure, like maybe we should have a repo. So I mean, yeah, if we could use, let's see. Yeah, I'm trying to think how best to organize this.
I mean, is there a different format that people prefer? Because maybe given different projects on, it's more of like we want to have more of a sort of result-driven thing where we know that these sort of products we need to come to some consensus about the Sphinx packet format stuff, and then we have the data sync stuff, and then we present something with there, and then the same thing with the sort of forked call around adaptive nodes for Swarm and so on. And once we have something more relevant, then it can be sort of presented as I don't know, maybe there's something like that we can do.
What would be useful, I guess, is if we could use this, assuming we're happy with this Riot channel, is if we could use this Riot channel to make sure that everybody knows what GitHub repositories actually have at least specs, if not code, that they should be following. Because like, I mean, I might, you know, I would, you know, a meeting is a meeting, and it's very, you know, it's very distracting to lots of people, but I read, you know, huge numbers of things on GitHub all the time. So it's not very hard for me to track data sync stuff on GitHub.
Yeah, absolutely.
Directly.
Yeah.
And it's, I mean, I'm sure that's basically true of all of us. So, or, you know, so if we can try and, I mean, I'm not sure what that means. Maybe we keep some list there that is sort of, you know, these are the interesting components that people are doing. And this is the one, so stuff that we actually think should be active versus like, this is just interesting stuff that's on the side, or this is historical.
Okay. What do other people think? Like, what would be useful from each of the various teams?
So I mean, sorry. Yeah, from my perspective, just a proper reading, so starting point for the reading list, and I think knowing which code bases to follow is a very good start. At this point, I couldn't see that anything else is needed, but let's start there.
Yeah. So. Okay, let me look.
So who administers this? Sorry, I didn't catch that.
Which part?
Well, I guess both. So, but at least so there was the list of which code bases to follow. So I guess somebody has to keep this up to date somehow, or take responsibility for at least bootstrapping it. Yeah.
I mean, people can just add their own repos, I guess, to maybe the.
Okay, so I thought would be to put it in. One thing we could do is we could put like some common bit in the readmes at the bottom of the repos. So there was this document I sent not last time, but the time before about this layering thing. We could put that somewhere and have it linked to what repos we actually think are going to, like what spec repos or whatever we think are actually going to develop into these things. We could put something much smaller where we just very briefly what we think the layering is. We can put this maybe in the bottom of the readmes of certain repos, like and say, well, okay, this is, I'm not exactly sure.
Yeah, right. So from what I understood, of course, we can add our own repos, but then it seems like somebody has some ideas about, multiple repos that should be followed by people that are not necessarily here, right? So somebody has to bootstrap that somewhere.
This layering document that I put last time.
It's in the messaging channel.
Yeah, okay. So messaging channel.
I have it open, I think.
Okay. Oh yeah, 15. Yeah, you were editing it. So. Where did I save that?
No.
It's further back. Oh no, that's
Not
way
further
back.
back, yeah.
How did this not end up in there? What was I doing?
Just here.
Oh yeah. Okay. Can we?
I saw Robert joined as well. Robert, can you talk?
Yep. Hey.
Hi. Well, what's your what does in terms of
Sorry.
reaching some kind of consensus on packet format and these types of things and milestones? Like what does it look like from a Validity Labs point of view?
Well, sorry, I noticed that I've been muted in the last 20 minutes. Yeah, milestones. Our milestone is to have a minimal viable product, an MVP, as soon as possible. This is our milestone. And well, I think there are some there's some experience that we need to get through that process, and this is mostly about topology of networks and
So okay, by topology you mean the sort of the libp2p? Okay, so a lot of people tend to use gossip for everything in libp2p, which is not right for this. So that's one thing you might mean, and the other thing you might mean is the topology of the mixnet.
I mean the topology of libp2p.
Oh, libp2p. Okay. Okay. I need to understand that for other reasons. So maybe we can meet up later this week and talk about this. Okay. Cool.
You can come over if you want.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Sounds good.
Yes, this is the milestone, and yeah, and well, it's hard to say.
That's fine. I'll be interested to understand this because we're having other problems with this. So, and I don't understand them yet because I'm not really that level of networking person. But
and we found out that well, as we know that I think most of you know that Tor is a little bit centralized, as they collect the servers or create a list of all available Tor servers every hour, and this makes the whole problem a lot easier. And yes, well, if you want to do that completely decentralized, then there are some problems.
Normally, well, we don't. We want to probably literally put the nodes on chain.
No, it's not on chain. I mean, if we had this in a decentralized way, this makes things a little bit more complicated.
What do you mean by decentralized?
Like for Tor, we have a centralized list. This is provided by the Tor Foundation.
Sure.
And then everybody can download that list, and
it's actually provided by 9 independent people. But yes. Okay, 9 independent people. Well, but they find a consensus who's on the list and so on. Sure.
If you do this more decentralized, then you will have a lot more problems.
Yeah, I mean, what you need is you need a way to kick people off that aren't still on it. And
Exactly. To find out who's still online, who's not online.
Okay, so I have some answers for that.
So sorry for just in terms of the like, do we think this is something that goes like in terms of this group? Is this something we do in parallel to the Sphinx packet format thing, or like I'm trying to understand like how we can move towards more.
This is something. So Robert and I need to get together and talk about both packet format and this stuff. It sounds like I hadn't quite realized that they were running into some of the same problems we were, but this is fine. I'll try and get together with Rob. We can take this offline, and Robert and I can try and make progress on this week.
Good. At some level, like this is what we have to figure out as well, because each product they have their own sort of roadmap and so on, and then we need to figure out like where do we want to have consensus and coordination, and I guess that's where these types of milestones and so on, like maybe that notion does make sense. I don't know, and I think that's the question we have to answer ourselves.
So it sounds like there's some general problem with the interface to libp2p that I hadn't understood. So I come from this GNU-net background where I wasn't also doing the networking stuff, but it let you set up channels between nodes and whatever. And so I've always assumed libp2p was the same sort of thing. It could be that in fact libp2p is much more gossip oriented than I had ever realized. And
the problem is that it is connection oriented, but
well, that's a good thing. No.
No, the problem is that connection-oriented means that there's always a method to reply, but for us it's optional.
There's always what?
There's always a method to reply to messages. For example, if you send me a message, I can always reply to you. And
why is that a problem?
Well, if you do not say who you are or include it in the package, then no one knows that.
Yeah, but you're not doing this in libp2p, you're doing this above libp2p. Well, we can meet this in person and figure it out and try to understand. So that sounds different from the problems we're having. But,
well, you know the distinction between connection-oriented and connectionless connections, no? The difference between UDP and TCP.
Sure.
Is more TCP oriented, and mixnets or Sphinx-based mixnets are more UDP oriented. But what do you mean?
Not in principle, but not exactly. I mean,
in principle, yeah. And
you need the replies to know if it actually got through or not, because I mean the UDP packet's limited to 8K, so probably you want packets that are larger than that.
What did you say?
A UDP packet is limited to 8K, and you probably want mixed.
Okay, and this is not about the size. It's about the communication model.
Like keeping the connection open.
Sure.
That would be a connection oriented. What if you just send something and then forget about the connection? That's more a message. Message oriented.
Okay. All right, Robert. So I'll come over and visit you sometime this week.
Okay.
So maybe we should start to wrap up. I don't know. I would suggest that maybe we have the next one in a month. And I guess from the status point of view, that's useful for this group. What we will.
Yeah, that's fine. I think that's fine. If we start making more progress, so that would be on July 2nd.
I guess so, yes.
And maybe we can just initiate a roadmap that people can all edit, and then we can discuss what we have.
Yeah, that sounds cool.
You mean like a roadmap for each product, and then sort of merge them together in some way?
Yeah, overall roadmap, and then of course each part of it can have more detailed roadmaps, but then like every group can just write into the roadmap where they're going to contribute, so that we know where we are.
Sure, we can have we can do that. Yeah. So what would be, how do we go about that? Like each group sort of just adds to a common document about like here's our.
Yeah, we can just say, okay, like the goal is to have this messaging service. What do we need to do to achieve that? What are all the bits and pieces that we need for that? And just write them down, and then everyone can say, okay, I want to help here, or I want to help there. And then we have the thing is so that all of us are on the same picture, on the same, on the same page, so we know what the road is going to be for getting there.
For example, one goal for us is to have at the moment we have a basic command line tool with some interaction, but our long-term goal is to have Hopper in the browser, such that you can click on our repo and have some pop-up where you can chat or send messages to play around with that code. And for example, people can help us creating this interface which wraps the API functions. And this is what I think to jump into this project. And,
So in terms of data sync, we're almost at the stage where you could swap out the sort of transport privacy layer. So not quite, but like an idea then is that you could swap out our current Whisper for this mix of proof of concept, but also things like PSS and the mesh book stuff. So that's where we are at. We have a sort of the rough version of a draft of the spec, but in a few weeks time we'll have a sort of a fairly solid version of the MVP for the spec. So and some stuff around how we might leverage Swarm for offline messaging and so on. And then preliminary results from the adaptive node stuff.
If it's public, yet whenever it's public, just if you send me or post in the channel the GitHub the spec URL, repo URLs or something, I'd love to read it.
Yeah, absolutely. We're still merging some different documents. Once it's in a better shape, hopefully this week or next week, I'll send it.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Wonderful.
All right. So maybe we can continue in the right channel and see how we can come about some common kind of roadmap.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks. Oscar?
Yeah.
Oscar, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Would you have 10 minutes to meet me on some other channel, perhaps? Or are you busy?
Can we chat? I have a call in like 5 minutes.
Just tell me when is good for you today sometime, and let's try to hook up.
Okay, cool.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.